There it is. It is. Thanks a bunch. There. That's huge. Now, I got to tell you this. If you have not heard this line yet, at my son's graduation, Eric spoke last year and had one of the, it takes a lot to make me laugh hard, but he did. He said to start out, what a selfish society we live in, and he held up his phone and he said, do you know why they call them selfies? And I'm sitting there thinking, no, I don't. And he says, because narcissistic was too hard to spell. And I laughed so hard, and I love that line. Tonight has been amazing. Bob, I want to thank you for sharing the amazing history. What an amazing history. And then to hear Kathy and that talk in 28 years. How many of you have done anything for 28 years? That was amazing. And then to hear Sam, what an amazing young man. I really want to come back in 15 years when you're with your wife and your kids and you're dropping them off at Grace. What an incredible, incredible deal. And this is amazing to me because one of my dreams in life, I've been performing for 28 years, and tonight is amazing for me. I've always wanted to perform in front of a Jenga wall. This is amazing. It's a dream come true for me. And I got to tell you, I'm one of you, but as I get older, I've started to see life a little bit differently. And I love that I am getting to get older. And I met a gentleman last year at one of these type events in another part of the state, actually. And they said, hey, this guy's going to be there, and he's a big comedy fan. I'm like, great. He says, he's seen some of your stuff. He wanted to meet you. And I was like, great. And he says, he's 103. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I want to meet this guy. I met him, and I'm like, 103, that's amazing. I said, what is it like being 103? He goes, oh, I don't know. And I said, what is the best part of being 103? And he goes, oh, that's easy. And I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, what's the best part? And I'm not making this up. It's the only line I've ever used that I didn't write. He goes, 103. I said, what's the best part? He said, that's easy. And I said, what is it? And he said, no peer pressure. And I was like, I said, dude, that is fantastic. I said, I've never had anybody write for me. Can I use that? He said, I'm 103. I won't remember. And I was like, that is so great. And I love this now that as I get older, I get to be around some older people. And at this precious corporate event I did in Alabama, president of the company, I go, hey, thanks for having me. I said, how are you doing? And she goes, well, I'm doing better. And I was like, oh, okay, why better? And she goes, well, my dad passed on this past year. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. She goes, no, it wasn't unexpected. He lived an incredible life. It's just an adjustment. I said, well, thank you for having me. And she goes, I need a good laugh. Thanks for being here. She walked away. Her son-in-law, who I also know, walked up right after that. He said, she tell you about Pawpaw? I said, yeah, I'm really sorry about that. She tell you about the hospital? I said, no. And he says, Ken, it was the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. They called us like 3 days before he passed, all to the hospital. It was near the end, and Papa's sitting in the corner with his oxygen mask taking a nap, just. And he says, and she's standing there, the whole family's in the room, and she decides to plan his funeral in the room there. And she's asking him questions, and he's asleep, but somehow she's getting answers. It's like, Dad, oh, you love that psalm. Do you want us to read that psalm? Okay, we'll read that psalm. And oh, that hymn you love. Do you want us to sing that hymn at your, okay, we'll sing that hymn. And he says, I'm watching Papa, and he's asleep. And she's going through all these questions, gets to about the 10th question. Finally, she just went, Dad, I can't make this decision. We're going to do whatever do you want to do, but do you want to be buried or do you want to be cremated? He said, for the first time, Papa's eyes just shot open. And he looked around the room and took 2 big, deep breaths. Just said he looked at everybody in the room, took the mask off his face, and just went, surprise me, and put it back on his face. That's how I want to go right there. That's awesome. As you get older, you get a perspective. Now, I gotta do this real quick. This is visual because I want you to have an idea of what it means to be old. And I don't know if you knew this or not. This is visual. Let me get this set. Here's the deal. I got to make sure I do this right. Now, did you know that you can tell how old a tree is by how many rings it has? Did you know that? Yeah, did you know that you can tell how old a man is by where his waistline is? Did you know that? This is middle school right here, okay? And then it goes to high school and then to college. I do not know what age it is, but at some age that waistline just crawls up. This is how my dad used to meet me at the door before he passed. And he'd give me a hard time. Hey, son, got a little spare tire working there, huh, son? Not me, not me. I wear the same waist size I did in high school. I said, yeah, Dad, but you know what? I never have a problem getting underarm deodorant on my waistband. That never happens to me. Now, here's the deal. Here's the part that really scares me. One day he woke up and he did his hair. Now, my dad he used to give me a hard time about my hair. I had big hair. Do you guys remember the late 70s, early 80s? Do you remember that time? It was a hand high, okay? You took a picture of buckwheat, I looked like the negative, okay? That was me. I love that some of you got that. That was awesome. If you're under 35, they're going, who is buckwheat? What is a negative? I was 5'10", weighed 113 pounds. I looked like a vanilla Tootsie Pop everywhere I walked. And he'd be like, you weird, he'd freak, weird, your bird nest on your head. But my dad had what I call the swoop, okay? Now, these are the men who just lost it on top. Now, some of you guys are bald. That's awesome. Embrace it. That's great. But my dad refused. He was the one that had that. Have you ever seen these where they got hair, they grow it like 4 feet long? And it kind of looks normal until they go out in the wind or something. It's like, whoa. But here's what he did. He would get up in the morning. He'd do his hair. He'd put on his dark socks and flip-flops. Put on his plaid shorts and a striped shirt. And here's the part that scares me, because he would look in a mirror and he would have the mental thought, this looks good. I told my wife, you keep a gun with one bullet. The day you see me like that, you just go, it's time. Okay, But as I've gotten older, I've realized, I've gotten some perspective. I've heard two phrases at funerals that I've been to. And I know you've heard them too. He passed away or he passed on. And I was sitting at one time and God just hit me between the eyes. He's like, Ken, which are you doing? Are you just passing away or are you passing on? And let me just tell you, what we've seen here today is the result of those who are passing on. Those who have decided, I want something to pass on, whether it was the land, whether it was the development, whether it was a teacher who decided to invest and become an administrator in 28 years of passing on. To see a young man who is saying, I'm ready to get up and start passing on. That is amazing. But I had a little bit more of a perspective a couple years, not even a couple years, about 14 months ago, almost to the day 14 months ago. I had an experience that I hope none of you ever have to have, but I had a little bit of fatigue, and I couldn't explain it. At dinner with somebody of mine who's a doctor, I said, dude, can I come by and just you run some tests, tell me I'm getting old? And he said, yeah, come on by. Went by, ran some tests. He said, you're old. That's what it is. He said, Ken, you're in great shape. Everything says you're in great shape. There's this one scan they can do, and you don't qualify because you got to be overweight, you got to have a history, you got to have all these. But if you want to do it, I'll make a prescription. You can go do it. I did it. To make a long story somewhat short, I went and he called me on a Friday night. I'm about to walk on stage. He said, Ken, I got your test results back. And I was like, oh, okay. It's a Friday night, but I thought, all right. He said, remember I told you 0 to 6 was okay. That's good. 7 to 12 is caution, yellow light. But 13 to 20, that's, you need to see a cardiologist. And I'm like, well, let me guess. It's a Friday. Mine must be 20. And he said, no, yours is 697. And I'm like, so I'm dead and I don't know it? What does that mean? He says, I don't know. He says, but you ought to go see a cardiologist when you get back. I can read you what the notes are. I said, read me the notes. And I'm not making this up. I kept a copy of them. It says, this heart is in the bottom 2% of all hearts. And this is my favorite line. A cardiac episode is imminent. And I'm like, So I go to a cardiologist the next week. Fast forward, he ran some tests. They came back perfect until he did a scan after a stress test. And he said, wow. Now, I literally did my run. I run about 100 miles a month, and I did my workout, rode my bike, went in and had the test. Between that time and that test, he said, Ken, there's something seriously wrong with your heart. We need to do something now. And I said, what do you mean now? He says, what are you doing tomorrow morning? I said, well, what are you doing tomorrow morning? He said, I'm going to be at the hospital. I said, I'm going to be at the hospital too. What are we going to do? And he said, I got a little cath scar on my wrist where they went in and looked. They knocked me out. I woke up an hour later, and he said, I'm so sorry. There's nothing I can do. Now, that's not something you want to hear from a cardiologist. And I said, what do you mean? He says, there's so much blockage. We've got you slated. You're on an emergency run to be, you're going to have open heart surgery. I found out afterwards, my wife found out that night, the thoracic surgeon came in. She said, he told her, she said, Mrs. Kington, your husband's arteries, all 4 of them, and you only have 4 major arteries, all 4 of his are over 99% blocked. She said, how is that possible? And he said, I don't know how his heart's beating right now. Now, some of you are looking concerned, so I'm going to go ahead and spoil the ending of the story for you. I made it, okay? So it's okay. But what I learned in those next 16 hours, from learning that I failed to that time that I was going to literally have open heart surgery, I realized in 16 hours, I'm closing my eyes. And the next face I see is going to be Heather or Jesus. And I don't think most people have that kind of a consciousness of that moment. And I remember I got on Facebook and I learned what was really important. And just my wife sent out, and it spread like wildfire. I got thousands of people that were texting, hey, man, we're praying for you. And I heard about it. I can't believe it. We're praying for you. I had a couple people say, hey, we're thinking about you. And I wrote them back, hey, think about me later. I need you praying now, all right? Because I don't want to get in front of Jesus and him go, yeah, nobody asked. You know, I didn't want that experience. And I can tell you that I've experienced the power of prayer, and it is amazing. When you have a thoracic surgeon afterwards, 2 weeks I did my follow-up. He said, Ken, I have no idea how your heart, I said, I'm literally looking at your heart going, there's no reason why that heart should be beating. And he said, you were days, if not hours away from a massive coronary, and you would not have survived it. And he said, it's just the sustaining of God. And I remember thinking, okay, Lord, I've always walked with you, but here's the coolest part, because I remember them sending me verses, and I read them that morning. And when you've got an atmosphere of the truth, and you've got an atmosphere of praise and prayer, amazing happens. And that's what grace is. It's literally the truth and a connection with God, and amazing happens. I remember that next morning reading through the verses people sent me. 2 stick out. One was, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. And what we've seen happen here is what God does over time. And it's amazing how he really does care for what's happened here. And I love the stories Bob shared and getting to see Sam. That's just amazing. That's God. And getting to see that is amazing. But I remember this one verse, Dr. Myung came in and he says, how you doing? And I said, well, Dr. Myung, real question today is, how are you doing? Because I need you bringing your A game today. And he says, I got my A game. I said, all right. They're wheeling me down the hall. And I kissed my wife. It would be the last time ever. And I remember this, just praying, going, God, I want to see my kids again. And I want to see my wife. And I want to grow older. But you know what, Lord? I want to see you too. And if I don't make it, I trust you. You're going to take care of them. And I remember I'm laying in the OR. And one of the PAs said, Mr. King, looks like we're ready. Are you ready? And I just smiled. And literally, I went, I am. And this verse went through my mind. For me to live as Christ and to die as gain. And I smiled and I just went to sleep. What seemed like 5 minutes was actually 6 hours. And have you ever been asleep, but somebody turns on a light and you still squint because you can tell the light was on? I started waking up and it was so bright, I could not open my eyes. And it was deafeningly quiet. And I'm laying there I literally started laughing because I was like, I wonder which one it is. And I started to open my eyes, and it was so bright I could not see. And then I saw these silhouettes, and I'm just trying to focus. And then I saw my wife's face. And I remember trying to tell her, hey, it looks like I made it. But I was still intubated, so I couldn't talk. I just went, hey, I love you. And she came over and kissed me on the head. They're wheeling me down the hall, and I started laughing. Because I realized in that moment, I was completely conscious. And I know they thought it was the anesthesia, but it was not. I'm like, Lord, this is amazing. You know what, God? You could have really messed with me right there. I mean, I could have waken up 3 minutes before she got there, some bearded medical tech over me going, hey, man, you okay? You all right? And I'd have been like, Peter, no? Moses? No, who are you? You know, just, oh. But see, when we have that foundation of Christ and truth and prayer and support, it doesn't matter how crazy life gets. It makes a difference. And I don't know if you know this or not. We live in a time with more choices than any other time in the history of the world. Do you realize that? And they're not all good either. I mean, let me prove it to you. How many of you have ever sat in the last month with a remote control in front of a TV and gone through 900 channels and there was nothing on? There's too many choices. And our society is solving problems nobody has. I'm driving to the airport today. I see speed limit 55, speed limit 70. That's my favorite. Have you seen the ones, do they have them in North Carolina on the bottom, every fifth sign? They have these minimum speed, 40 miles an hour. Have you seen these? Why? Have you ever been in a car with somebody going, hey, you see any cops? I'm doing 35. Woo! I mean, is this happening? My children mock me with this one every October. I have 2 in college now and 2 in middle school. They come up with me every October, Dad, here's your favorite candy. And they laugh at me. Tuba candy, been out about 12 years now. Mini M&Ms. Have you seen them? Why? Why did we need that? Were people sitting around eating regular M&Ms going, oh dang, I can't finish a whole one. I just wish they would make these smaller. I'm going to put that in some foil, eat the rest of that later. Now, see, what I'm so thankful for, and I know you are as well, is for a place like Grace. Because it's answering real questions and giving tools to answer those questions and deal with real life. I have 2 sons, and Mr. Bradley was their principal in high school. And I'm telling you, right before they were first in high school, and this really happens because I know some of you have these. I have both my sons in the back. They're 11 months apart. I'm driving them to school, about to get into carpool line. That's a whole different set of material right there. But I'm going to give you one. I think you should auction off a bazooka, okay? And if you're ever in line behind that parent that has a teacher conference in carpool line, you get to shoot them one time. Just poof, move it out of the way. I'm sorry, that got too real right there. All right. But I'm driving to school, and I tell you, as a dad, my least favorite phrase I might have. I'm driving to school out of the back seat. I hear, uh-oh. What do you mean, uh-oh? I might have forgot something. That was February, and it was cold, and I'm thinking, what did you forget? Now, somebody over here, February cold, driving to school, what do you think he might have forgot? Anyone want to take a guess? Who said shoes? Do you know my son? He said I might have forgot my shoes. I said, well, look on your feet. Do you see shoes on your feet? No, sir. At what point do you walk outside across a cold concrete floor and not have the mental thought, there's nothing on my feet? This is the same son. His room's in the basement. I walked downstairs to see how he was doing one night. It is freezing. I can see my breath. It is so cold. He is sitting on the couch in a quilt cocoon. You can see his eyes and fingertips holding an Xbox controller. That's it. I walk up on this, I said, hey man, it's freezing down here. And out of the quilt I hear, I know, right? I said, why don't you turn the heat up? I don't know how. So let me get this straight. You can operate 27 buttons simultaneously, but that box on the wall with 2 buttons in the shape of arrows, that confuses you. I know, right? Wow. But see, I love this kid. He's a great student. Great little athlete. He's doing incredible, got some great scholarships. And I attribute all that to the education and the environment of a place like Grace. And he's just free. And he makes me laugh. This past Christmas, he's like, Dad, are you going to Florida this year? I said, yeah, I got a couple tours. He says, can I go? And I'm like, dude, if you're not in school, I love it when you go with me. And I said, why do you want to go to Florida? He goes, I want to go to SeaWorld. And I'm like, you know, you really didn't like that as a kid. He's like, I know, I just want to walk around and see people's reaction. I said, reaction to what? And he says, I'm taking a fishing pole. He comes out from a date about a month later, right after Christmas this past year, and he's like, Dad, I said, how was the movie? He's like, great, it was great. We had a great time. Your mom ought to go see it. I'm like, cool. He says, but Dad, can I ask you a question? I'm like, sure. He goes, do they ever treat you like a criminal when you go to the movie? I said, what did you do? He goes, nothing. I got the tickets and I paid for the tickets, but she took my 20 and she just went. I said, do they do that randomly? They've done that to me before. It's not a big deal. They do that to everybody. He goes, you know what I did? I said, what did you do? He said, she gave me my change, and I went. I am so doing that next time. That is awesome. But see, here's what I've learned. As I think through this, I want to pass on. I want to pass on help. And I'm telling you, Grace is, and the leadership here, and what I got to tour the school today, what an incredible place of grace and truth and that which is of Christ. And there is not a better foundation anywhere. And as we pass on to ask the question, what do I need to be passing on? Because we all need help. We all need help. I knew that right out of the gate. Well, especially when my wife and I first started dating, she would tell me how she was in advanced classes in school. I would tell her about special class in school. We had bigger pencils in my class. And I love this. She told me, now the phenomenon she told me about, and I want you to raise your hands. She told me about when she was in school, she got paid from her parents and grandparents for making good grades. Have any of you ever gotten paid for making good grades? Raise your hands real quick. That's awesome. You should be proud of that. How many of you are like me, and even if it was one time, grades were coming out, you knew that it was not going to go well? Did anybody else do this? Go home, find like a cancel check and practice forging your parents' signature? Anybody else do that? Yes, these are my people. Right on. This is my favorite, though. We've been married about a month, and out of nowhere, my wife, we're driving, married a month. She goes, I don't know if I've ever told you this. I said, told me what? She said, from kindergarten through college, I only made 1 B. I said, me too. But see, she's the one that I realized we all need help. We all need help because I realized my wife has a glitch, a condition. She's a language arts teacher, 4.0 student, but she will say words and phrases and mix them up and say them as if they are real. And they are not. I'll never forget the very first one. We were dating. We were engaged, actually. Went for a jog together. Got to the end of the jog, and she went, whew, I am sweating like a bullet. I said, honey, I don't think bullets sweat. And she looked at me very emphatically. She said, no, it's a saying. Okay. She's a teacher. Some teachers had done something wrong. She told me the story that weekend, punctuated by, and Monday morning, the fan is going to hit the roof. Did they not screw it in or what? Now, see, the great part is you never know when they're going to happen. We're driving back from the beach one time, and I hear this angelic voice behind me. My daughter, who at the time was about 1.5, she's trying to get her to go to sleep, and I hear behind me, Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. And she leaned forward. She said, what's the next line? I said, QRSTUV. I don't know. I don't know. Now, I got to tell you this. It's amazing to me that even she picked it up one time. I almost bit a hole through my lip. We were at dinner, got a text. A friend of ours was in the hospital. We go to the hospital, and he had chest pains. We're like, oh, my goodness, very somber moment. We walk up, and his wife is walking out of the room at that exact moment. And we're standing there, we're like, is he okay? She goes, he's okay. He's okay. They ruled it out. It wasn't a heart attack. We're like, oh, good. She goes, but he's still in some pain. They're going to do some more tests. They're going to keep him overnight. But he's still got a little bit of pain. And but they think they got that under control. And they're going to let him go in the morning. But he's still in some pain. But it's okay. The nurse just went in to seduce him. So she looked away for a minute. I leaned over to my wife. I said, I don't feel so good myself. But see, I'm so glad that we have each other, and we are very different, and I know that you're different, but when we come together in those times of need, and let me just tell you, this environment is to put that true north, to give us true north. And when I have trouble, I call my wife because she is what I am not. And I was in Jacksonville one time, 5-hour delay on my flight. I'm flying to get to an event, and I'm in the car changing because I got to walk straight into the green room, straight on the stage. And I realized I forgot to pack something. So I call her. I'm like, Heather, help. And she's like, what's wrong? I said, I forgot. She goes, what'd you forget this time? I said, I forgot socks. She said, well, calm down, Sparky. They sell those in stores. And I was like, yeah, but you don't understand. I'm already late. I don't know where the stores are. I don't have time. What do I do? She goes, okay, let me think. She goes, I'll bet there's a drugstore on their way. And I'm pretty sure drugstores try to carry dress socks. Try a drugstore. Sure enough, 1 minute later, there's a Walgreens. I blow in the Walgreens. Good news. Walgreens carries dress socks. Bad news. Walgreens only carries women's dress socks. Good news, they're really comfortable. Okay, I'm just saying. I'm sitting there, do I get them? Do I not get them? And I saw in the package, one size fits all. And I know some women with some pretty honking feet, okay? So I grabbed them. Actually wore them tonight. I want you to see them, all right? These are them. Now, if you're in the back, you may be thinking, those are just regular dress socks. They're short. Well, let me just tell you, men's dress socks do not do this. I'm actually attracted to myself right now. I'm not going to. Oh, my goodness. Well, I just got to tell you, as we all need help, I got to show you one other piece here to pull this to, because here's the deal. We all need help at some point in time, and we all can be help. And it's one of the greatest examples of that, and I want to give you a visual of it. When our boys were small, they were 5 and 4, we took them to Disney. And the last day there, we said, get a souvenir. And I'll never forget, my oldest son, he's the intellectual, but he had this just shopper's trauma. He wanted like 5 different ones. No, you only get one. Now, Cody's my rough and tumble, my athlete, 3 years old. He fell down, skinned both knees, never cried, just buh, and just kept running, okay? He's tough. But as we looked at this wall, and I see Cody walk up, and I'm thinking, what is he going to get? Disney makes most of their stuffed animals gender neutral. They make a few that are masculine in nature. As I saw that wall of hundreds, I only saw one that was feminine in nature. And there's my rough and tumble Cody holding Duchess the cat. I'm like, dude, what you got there? And he's like, I want a kitty. I'm like, you want a cat? I want a kitty. Well, you know, Tigger's a cat. Look at this, Tigger. Bear, bear. You love Tigger. No, I want a kitty. Well, Lion King, here, I'm pulling out options. I'm like, Lion King is no. Every option I gave, this got closer and tighter. No, I want a kitty. And he never wavered. And I just thought, okay, and he loved this cat. Now, here's the cool part. I went in that about 2 weeks later into his bedroom. Now, I always prayed for my boys at night, and I still do pray for them, but I prayed for them when they were little. I'd tuck them in. And I don't know where I came up with this, but I would just touch their head, and I'd say, God, give them wisdom beyond their days. Give them a heart of compassion. Give them legs that walk in the truth, arms that reach out to others. But, Lord, please. And when I say please, they started wiggling, because they knew it was next. I would like, please give them joy. And I'd just tickle them till they couldn't breathe. And when they couldn't stand it anymore, they'd go, my joy tank's full, my joy tank's full. And I'm like, God, thank you for giving them joy. I walk in 2 weeks. His back's to the door. He's on his bed, on his knees. I'm like, buddy, hop into bed. It's time to go to bed. He says, Daddy, come here. I walk around, and there's Duchess laying on his bed with his little green blanket over Duchess. He says, Daddy, watch. I'm like, what is he doing? And he says, I pray the head and the heart and the legs and joy, 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 joy. He said, look, Daddy, I'm the daddy. I was like, oh, you can keep the cat. Fast forward a couple years. Our daughter came into the world, and if you've ever had children, you know these nights happen. We couldn't figure out what was wrong. She's 1.5, and she's screaming for over an hour. My wife had tried everything. I went in, what can I do to help? And just then there's a little silhouette in the door. It's Cody. We're like, buddy, go back to sleep. It's okay. And he's like, and he mumbled something and walked away. I tried everything again for another 20 minutes. So it's an hour and a half now, squalling. And then in the doorway, there's Cody again. We're like, buddy, just go back to sleep. Close the door. We're so sorry. And he's standing in the doorway, and he looks, waits for us to pause, and he goes, she needs a kitty. We're like, buddy, just go back to sleep. But he wouldn't have it. He walked in. My daughter's screaming. He walks between my wife and I, reaches up and hands this. My daughter takes this cat, instantly stops crying, just lays down, rolls over, and goes to sleep. And my wife and I are looking at each other like, what just happened? And we both looked at the same time at the door, and he is walking out the door going, she need the kitty. I was like, what? I went back to bed, and as I'm laying there, anytime those moments happen in life, I just go, God, that was hysterical. What do you want me to get from that? What can I learn from that? Now, God has never spoken to me audibly, but in that moment, the most real I've ever heard him, he just said, Ken, the greatest joy in this life is not what you get. It's when you take what is most precious to you and you give it away. And I get chills to this day sharing that, because here's the deal. What we are doing tonight is that. We get that opportunity to say, you know what? What is most precious to us? It is that foundation. And not just of faith, but faith in the one true God. And we get to pass that on. And how cool is it that we get to do that? I want to just encourage you tonight. I want everybody to take this little card here. On one side, it's got kind of the goal and what parts you can play there. But on the back, it's your name. I want you to start filling that out for a second. And we're going to give you a couple minutes. Sophia is going to come up here. Sophia, go ahead and start making your way up. But you can do whatever God lays on your heart. I just want to encourage you in this, that God laid on my heart a couple years ago. It was a downturn, and I said, God, what do you want us to do? And God hit my heart with this. He said, Ken, you know what? It is a downturn. Not everybody can do more, but this is the year you need to do more. And I'm like, wow, okay. And then he laid on my heart a challenge. He says, but Ken, here's the deal. Even for those who can't, do something, because when you hear about what God's doing and you see somebody like Sam and we see what's going on, you're going to want to be a part. Fill that out. And I talked to Eric before, and he basically made an incredible offer that if you make a 6-figure contribution, he and Amy will legally let you rename one of their children. It's, I mean, wow. All right, so that offer's there. But just make that out, fill that out while Sophia, and I'm not going to attempt your last name. It is precious. Chikalski.
Yeah, the Z is silent. Yeah.
Wow. But you say all the other consonants. That's awesome. She's going to sing for us, and then I'll tell you what to do with those afterwards. Will you do me a favor and welcome Sophia with us tonight?